Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We are live together with Emile and Adrien. And we wanted to make a very, very short introduction since due to connectivity issues that we had during our rehearsal, we wanted to make sure that you have a seamless experience about the interview. So we pre-recorded the bigger portion of the interview that I'm going to launch now. And then we will be available at the end for Q&A from the audience. I'm going to start now on the platform, the Q&A. Feel free to write down the question that you have during the interview, and we will be able to cover that at the end. So see you in a little bit. I'm launching the recording now. Welcome, everyone, to our fourth webinar session. I'm very pleased to welcome today Emile Jensen and Adrien from Heex Technologies. We're going to cover some topic about the AMR market, specificities in different regions, things that are going well, things that are maybe more challenging. And that should be a very interactive and nice conversation. Before we dive into some more insightful topics, I'd like to our contributors, speakers to introduce themselves. Emile, welcome.
Yeah, hi Pierre. Wonderful to be on your webinar, and thanks for the invitation. My name is Emile Jensen. I work in mobile robotics for a number of years. Recently with Intel in the real sense department. Before that with a Chinese startup called Geek Plus, and before that it was a Danish startup called Mobile Industrial Robots. I also run a website called the Mobile Robot Directory, where you can go and find hundreds of different mobile robots.
Okay, well, welcome and thanks again for joining us today. Adrien?
Hi, everyone. My name is Adrien. I've been a senior account executive here at Heex for about a year. I'm kind of fresh and new into the world of robotics, and it's been great, actually, just uncovering so many different use cases, especially right now for AMRs. It's a booming market. And I have to say, Emile, thank you very much for that, for the mobile directory, because it's been a great resource for me to learn more about robots and the market itself. So very excited about today's webinar.
Great. Thank you, Adrien. So now let's get to our topic of today. And maybe before starting, I guess a lot of people would be interested to know, Emile, what initially sparked your interest in the autonomous robotics space?
Yeah, actually, I was coming from selling environmental protection equipment, air filtration for industry. We had a lot of customers in automotive, and we saw that there was a big shift towards robotic welding in particular. So that's how I got into robots. It was I was cleaning up after the robots when they were doing the welding, and I was looking into that, and it had a shift like from 5% to 40% to 60% of all new welding installations in China went robotic in a handful of years. I was like, wow, there's something going on here. And then around that time, I got in contact with this Danish company called Mobile Industrial Robots, and they had a robot that could drive intelligently around stuff. So I'd seen AGVs before, and I'd experienced them back in, I think the first time was Lego in 96. I was in the Lego factory. Everything was fully automated. There was not a single human involved in the making of the things, only in the programming of the robots. And that's when I came across AGVs the first time. It was amazing. And then this Danish company came and said, we have something called an AMR, which is like an AGV, but it can drive around things, right? So when I was at Lego, the first thing they told us is when the AGVs are coming, the humans need to get out of the way. The AGV will stop, but you're going to stop the production, right? And then the AMRs came around, and they're like, well, we can just drive around things, and you don't have to worry about us. We are collaborative. And that's how I got into it. I thought it was, wow, this is new. This is exciting. This is a handful of years ago. So it's less new today, but that's my introduction to how I got into mobile robots.
Yeah, very interesting. And from what we can hear, you have an experience, because we're going to talk about specificities by region, working in Europe. You are calling from China. If you had to describe this AMR market in one word per region, what would this be and why?
Yeah, so maybe let me just highlight my experience so you know where I'm coming from. I was a VP of AMR in China, so running the China arm of the business here. And then later I was doing a general manager for what we call international business with Geek Plus, and that was mostly Europe and US. So I've been all over the world. I've done projects all over the world. And I like the question, by the way, Pierre. It's a great question. What is the one word to describe each region? And let's start with China. It's going to be 1.5 words. It's going to be full automation. Okay, so the projects here, the way I see it is that the Chinese are really going for no humans, lights out manufacturing, 100% automation kind of projects. In US, I would say the one word is productivity. So it's really about what are the productivity gains that you're getting and how fast is the system and so on. And the one word for Europe would probably be safety. I think Europe is leading on safety, but also in general more focused on safety than certainly than Asia.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Adrien, I mean, Heex Technologies has been successful in working with different AMR provider and end users in all of this market as well. What would be your answer to that question?
Well, honestly, compared to Emil, it's interesting, but for me, it's like just the volume that we're seeing from Asia, like the number of actors that we're seeing is really, really quite astounding, and how, and we're going to see this in a couple of slides we're going to present, just how they are on the verge of exploding and having even more of a market penetration. I think that'd be growth basically that I'm seeing from Asia, and then for America, it seems more like diversity. I feel like there's a little bit less regulation. We're seeing a lot more actors in delivery AMRs. There's like a lot more trial and error, whether it's in the Bay Area, whether it's in agriculture farming, where they're not afraid to just try out new things. And then, to Emil's point, I think it'd be more regulation, safety that we're seeing with Europe and the European Union that's trying to regulate some of these things before they flood the market. But we're seeing this market trend, so everyone is going to have to change rapidly here.
Okay, thanks. Back to you, Emil. Now that you have been like all over the world, do you have a defining moment in your work that reflects either the complexity or the opportunity of scaling in one specific region?
Defining moment. There's been a few defining moments, but I have a story about scale that was just blowing my mind. So it starts back in 2019. At the time, we were selling AMR robots in China, and there was one of the solar panel companies that purchased not a AMR robot but another brand of robots. They purchased 400 of them for automating the solar panel manufacturing. It's like, wow, this is a huge order. We've never seen projects in the size of 400. Okay, so we start looking into this, and their competitor wants to do the same thing. So solar panel manufacturing is 90% done in China. If you look at the whole world, it's a very Chinese market, and it's aggressively growing. It's on the line with battery manufacturing, of just a lot of capital going in and building lots of new factories. And they had decided they want to automate the material handling or the material flows. So all of the players all at once just started adopting mobile robot technology. I remember telling my headquarters in Denmark, we gotta invest in this. This is gonna be 3,000 robot market. And back then we were talking about 10 robots was a decent project, and 50 robots was a good project for the time, right? So suddenly you have customers talking about adopting thousands of robots, and that was really exciting. It turns out I was wrong. Okay, so later when I went to the Chinese Geek Plus, we actually did a lot of these projects, and it turned out it's 10,000 or 5,000 robots a year, and tens of thousands of robots deployed in solar panels in China today, and that happened since 2019. Just amazing fast.
Well, that's a very good sideway to what we wanted also to dive a little bit further into today, which is the market evolution, right? You touched to that point, but maybe on a broader scale and over the last 10 years, which region has surprised you the most in terms of robotics adoption, innovation, and why?
think there's different characteristics of all the regions. I think Europe and US have been leading in some of the technology innovation, especially around autonomy and how do we use intelligence in the robots, and how do we make them more collaborative and safe and so on. And then China, Asia, but really China has been leading in scale, just massive scale. And there's big technology differences. So one of the things that surprised me the most is that how different the markets are, right? So you have in Europe a number of robotic players that are really Europe-centric. You have in US a bunch of players that are US-centric, and recently some of them started setting up Europe offices. So let's say, the ones that have most of their business in US, and then they only now go into Europe. And in Europe, it's been the same. They have really most of the business in Europe. So I think that's really interesting. And then the part that China is just technology-wise completely different from Europe and US. They're using really different technology. It says I lost my connection. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, no, we all good.
Okay. So I'm just checking. So China is adopting a different type of robots and using really different concepts than Europe and US, which is fascinating and surprising to me.
Thank you. Adrien, I know you consolidated a few, data points for us to, have some visual on that market. Would you mind taking us through it?
Yeah, absolutely. Can everyone see the screen okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I just came up with these numbers here, thanks to Preston's research, actually, just to see, where the AMR market is right now. So autonomous mobile robots. I know for now it is very much like a small part of just robots in general. I think we just lost Emil, I think.
Yeah.
So I'll continue for now.
Okay.
You can reconnect. Basically, the biggest thing we're seeing is that the market is just starting, and we're about to have it explode in the next 10 years. What I found was the most interesting part, though, was that today, even though we're seeing a lot of acceleration happening in Asia specifically, there's a pretty even split, at least in terms of the market share between Europe, North America, and Asia Pacific. That is probably going to change very quickly in the next coming years, especially because, as Emil was just saying, China has a very domestic market, and more of the domestic actors are the ones selling those robots. So this is probably going to change very, very rapidly, and we're going to see more 40, 45, even 50% of the growth coming from Asia. And what's been really the biggest factors in accelerating all this has been the increase of e-commerce and AMRs in warehouses after COVID. Shortage of supply of employees has really accelerated that. Of course, the ability to have AI machine learning, back to Emil's point, where we're transitioning from AGVs, which are, robots just following a path or on a certain track and can't really comprehend if there's something new that happens, versus now with the advent of AI, where they can adapt to on the floor and depending on what's happening. And the last part is, of course, everyone is looking to leverage cobots for more productivity. Let's just check in here with Emil to see before we delve into the different regions.
Yeah, I think you can continue to maybe give us some insight on the regional market trends.
Absolutely. So the biggest market trends, we're seeing from the three different actors that we leverage here, so USA, Europe, and Asia. First off, America is a huge producer of AMR specifically for warehousing and automation. That's going to be the biggest we're seeing here for pickers, forklifts, fully automated warehouse stations where they're having all the goods. Again, for e-commerce is driving a lot of that growth. But there's a lot of strong tech advancements there with AI and machine learning. Again, probably the most innovation we're seeing there in North America, from agricultural to delivery to medicinal purposes to manufacturing, food automation. There's really a ton of different startups that are popping up in America. There's a lot of investment basically today in automation. Now for Europe, again, we're still seeing that they have a strong market share as of the last couple of years. Still basically like transitioning skills adoption and still having some funding happening from VCs, but maybe not to the point that we have from the North America. Hey, Emil, glad to have you back. We're just going over the different regions here and the market trends that we're seeing. So last but not least, Asia, which is, as Emil was just talking about, the fastest growing region overall, at least in terms of sheer volume. And they're probably going to drown the market very, very soon. There's a high demand coming from e-commerce on automotive, beverage sectors, things like that, just like in North America. And we're seeing emerging economies like India, China, Japan driving a ton of that growth, and a bit of South Korea as well. So that's very good.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. Emil, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Sorry,
Okay.
This was a firewall issue.
No worries, no worries. Adrian was able to, share a little bit more data regarding, regional market trends as well. And I'm glad that you just came back, because we wanted also to get your insight about any signals that you are seeing today that might indicate a market leadership shift among the three regions over the next 5 years. Do you think that there is a region that is underestimated today and is going to make a breakout? How do you see the things evolving for the next 5 years?
Oh man, that's tough, because the whole world is very difficult to predict at the moment. My first prediction would be that all regions are going to continue to do well. Okay, so you have sort of a balance between the regions in terms of size. Asia maybe has been a little bit smaller than Europe and US historically, but it's catching on. Asia is probably the biggest by volume, but then by revenue, it's not as big, because they use cheaper robots. I don't think that's going to change dramatically. I think all regions are going to grow and continue to have sort of a equilibrium between them. I think we're going to see more integration across the regions, right? So even though we are facing tariffs and trade barriers at the moment, people are trying to disconnect, but I still think that more robots are going to go into the US from Europe and certainly from China as well. And there's the other way, more American robots are going to come into Europe. What I'm seeing is it's really hard for foreign companies to succeed in China at the moment. The rest of Asia is more available to all players. And then you have a really strong trend of Chinese robotic companies going international. So I think what you're going to see is just more and more integration, more and more global players, and companies really trying to sell all over the world.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right. So you don't see the geopolitical tensions or trade regulation as a blocker, right, to the robotic deployment. It might even be actually a catalyzer in some regions.
So I'm definitely not the expert, and if I wish I knew what would happen. But part of the rationale. So let's say that US kicked off the latest round of tariffs, right? And part of the rationale behind it was bring back manufacturing, right? So okay. We want to have the manufacturing come back to United States. That's actually a reasonable goal.
Yeah.
How are you going to do that? You're not going to do it by bringing the jobs back. I'm sorry to say, it sounds nice politically to say we're going to bring jobs in manufacturing, but the reality is those jobs that are happening in iPhone factories in South China is not what you're not going to hire those people in the US to do that. So the way to bring back manufacturing is to robotize it and automate it, right? So I think in that way, it's actually a strong support for okay, if we're serious about bringing manufacturing back to the US, we need to get even more serious about automation.
Yeah.
And the way I see it, the US cannot make all the robots themselves at the moment. They have a few companies, but they need robots from all over the world to actually do that automation. And I think it's going to be the same in Europe. Europe will follow a little bit slower, but the same thing is that, hey, we can automate our way into having manufacturing here. We don't need to manufacture in low labor cost countries anymore. We can actually manufacture at home if we use robots. So overall, I'm very bullish on the future of automation and manufacturing in the Western countries using automation.
Yeah, you're right, and that resonates quite well with our former webinar where we hosted someone from a venture capital that heavily invests in robotics and saw the same, let's say, trend as well from a VC perspective. Now that we have a good picture about regional market trends and so on, I'd like to maybe raise some of the few technical and operational scaling challenges. Maybe Adrien, you can give us a quick snapshot about what we have seen so far, and then we're going to dive on some of this topic after.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just in terms of like technical operational challenges and scaling, what we've seen is that each region does have its own specificities here, and we've listed here some of the topics that we'll be discussing with Emil, just between things like open source and proprietary. What are you going to be leveraging within companies? I know, for instance, it's a big factor of just leveraging some open source libraries such as ROS, for instance, to accelerate, especially more for budding companies, versus maybe more traditional actors that have been building industrial robots for years and are now doing their own AMRs. So they have all that technology in there already. But I think one of the most interesting aspects, and we've even seen it today during this webinar, is things like internet connectivity. We're seeing a lot of actors, and this is going to depend maybe more on each AMR and what kind of AMR we're talking about. Because if we're talking about a quadruped that is being used for military purposes, that is surveying a military site, you maybe don't want to have that robot having internet access. But then if we're talking about more of a food delivery system, they're going to need to have constant internet connectivity, especially if they're in a civilian setting where you just need to have that data just for security purposes, to be sure that you have control over these robots, that they're not going crazy, like maybe some autonomous cars that we've seen in the past that can cause some accidents. So that for sure is each country maybe has a bit more, freedom. And I think maybe in China it might be easier, but I'd love to have your insights here, Emil, about that. And then in terms of sorry, go for it.
No, please continue.
Oh, and then just in terms of interoperability standards, I'm actually very curious. We're seeing more and more ISO certifications come up for robots to be able to go into production. And is that, at least for the European actors that we're seeing to have those robots go live, I'm kind of curious, is there as much regulation in other markets? I'm seeing this at least in the US and at least in Germany and France with a lot of actors that we're talking with today. So curious about your thoughts there. Yeah. I think the last part there is just for us talking about AI and autonomy, but we'll maybe save that for last.
Yeah, no, thanks, Adrien, and maybe yes, Emil, it would be good to hear you, regarding the first point on open source libraries. A lot of these AMR manufacturers are relying on a ROS framework, for example, that has benefits but also limitation. So, what is the trade-off, between open source, proprietary technologies, especially when you want to scale globally?
Yeah, good question. Actually, I think there's two parts to it. There's the commercial, strategic thinking about it, and then there's some practical things. So let's start with the commercial, right? If you're building an AMR today, you should ask yourself, what unique features am I going to bring to the market? And where do I use off-the-shelf components, whether open source or proprietary? I don't need to reinvent SLAM. I don't need to reinvent navigation. A lot of these things are working really, really well already. And unless you have some new AI-powered way of doing it better, you might want to use off-the-shelf available components, software components. And then focus your resources and your development effort on your idea and how you're going to make something new and better, right? So that's the starting point, is to say, don't make something that already exists. Focus your resources on things that you're going to do differently and better, and then use available technologies for the problems that have already been solved. And then the question is, okay, do I use open source or a commercial available SLAM or a commercial available navigation product, right? So here it's where it gets practical. I think not everything open source is equal. So there are things like licenses that you have to learn which licenses are business friendly and which are not. So some of them are, easy to use in a commercial product. Some of them will require you to make your own code open source as well, which can be quite a tough thing for business to accept. So licensing is a key thing to study when you're going the open source route. And then also, there's so many open source projects. Some of them are really strong. ROS is a really good project in general with lots of quality and support behind it. But you're going to have to figure out a way to say, okay, if I'm using open source, how good is the quality of the code, and can I trust it to remain good and be updated and so on. Whereas if you're going for a commercial proprietary solution, it comes with a contract, it comes with support and so on. So I think really the question is, what is the quality of the individual project and the licensing and so on, and how much effort are you willing to put in? Because ultimately, if you want to conserve your own resources, then a proprietary solution is probably going to get you there with the least amount of effort.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
That's a starting point for developing something yourself. Then open source can be excellent.
And I feel like we're leveraging a lot of open source, at least in the Western world, where people are definitely wanting to bank on these technologies and wanting to collaborate. We see a lot of robotics engineers, whether in their faculties, collaborating there. I'm curious, in China, from a business perspective, are clients asking more for proprietary systems to keep it safe, or are they actually more embracing the open source nature so that they can leverage it and make it their own, or do they see it as a risk?
Yeah, I would say that something like 80, maybe 90% of the GitHub projects come out of academia and are still at the quality of technology testing and experimentation, and not a lot of it is ready for production, ready for deployment in a commercial product. So even though there's so much going on, it doesn't mean that you can just take all the latest stuff. There's a lot of really interesting things happening all the time with AI and so on, but very little of that is suitable to directly deploy into a commercial production level.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, in order to facilitate that and to help those robotics companies to leverage the best of both worlds, Heex Technologies recently joined the Open Source Robotics Alliance, right, Adrien?
That's right. The OSRA, we just joined, and actually we'll be participating at different ROSCON events, because that's where you really see a lot of people just sharing. And I encourage everyone, please go on their own discourse, for instance. They're always discussing different topics, especially for kind of to your point, Emil, how do you accelerate your development very, very quickly? Which libraries do you want to operate depending on the AMR you want to build, or which tools like Gazebo or whatever tools you want to get data basically very quickly. So yes, very, very happy that we joined the OSRA and happy to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, no, that's good. Very good news. Emil, we see also internet connectivity being a big challenge, or the lack of internet connectivity, should we say. How does that play a role in designing decisions for AMR project across all these different regions?
Yeah, challenging even for me today. So I think one of the first things you have to think about is, are you deploying everything on-prem, or are you relying on cloud infrastructure and cloud services, right? So if you go back just a couple of years, maybe at most a handful of years, the default answer was on-prem. Customers were scared about clouds. There is this cybersecurity element, but there was also just the feeling that, hey, if the internet connection goes down, my production stops. I can't have that. Whereas today it's more nuanced. I think people are really seeing that cloud's features can add a lot of value, can speed up deployments, can make things a lot easier. And customers have also started using a lot of other cloud services, not just for their robots, but they're using cloud for a lot of their other software now. So they feel more comfortable with it. Still, I think, you will find customers that are saying no cloud or our own private cloud, something like that. So as a vendor, you have to be ready to support customer demands for having everything within their own network. But I think there's also lots of opportunity to deliver value-added services through the cloud, where you could say that maybe the real-time stuff is running on-prem, and we have that data analytics layer that is powered by the cloud. Things like that.
No, very interesting, and I guess this is also one of the approach of Heex to provide the different kind of integration and data infrastructure to this customer, both to support this internet connectivity challenges, data collection, cloud data infrastructure, and as well this massive amount of data that is being generated from robots, right? From the sensor, the camera, the LiDAR, and so on. Maybe, Adrien, you could give us a little bit more insight about the Heex approach and how you guys overcome those data management challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because to the point that we were making before, it kind of depends on each AMR, what we're talking about. Do they need to have internet connectivity all the time? Do they even have like a 5G or 4G chip on them, or do they have like send it at the base? And yes, this is where typically we do adapt to each customer, to each one of their needs. And our approach really to Heex is basically trying to help robotics engineers cut through the noise of log data and just get pertinent information so that they can either, if they're working more in R&D phase, if we're talking more about a startup that is developing a robot before it goes into production and they just want to know why it's malfunctioning and iterate on the code base fast, being able to send firmware updates over the air very quickly, basically just getting the pertinent data, reviewing it in a contextualized way, and then working through their pipeline basically to update it. And then we're also seeing a second use case, more maybe meant for customer success managers or fleet management operators that are more looking to see, once their robots are in production, how all that is operating. Because there's a very high cost of investment for a lot of these companies that are going from automating their warehouses or different work that they're doing, and they want to know that this high investment in robots is getting the results that they want. So they want to be able to know at any time how well it's operating, and if there's any kind of error that is not in the manual, getting as much contextualized information so that they can iterate on it very, very quickly. And this is basically what we strive to do to generate what we call smart data for robotics. So again, just contextualize information from logs. So today we're talking about AMRs, but this can apply for a number of robots in the world. So it could be just AMRs as we're talking today, but a lot of industrial robots as well. We're talking with a number of companies as well. They're more looking into predictive maintenance, understanding when a piece may become faulty, when we want to replace it so that it doesn't break, and there's then a very high cost of fixing it. Obviously, smart mobility, I think even more than AMRs, are generating like terabytes of information with LiDARs, cameras, all the different sensors that they have. They really have a bottleneck here for them, more about just sending the data, where the cost alone is making it more interesting to just have a solution like Heex. And then the last would be more off-road autonomy, where you need to have connectivity all the time for trucks or any kind of smart agricultural robots that are out on the fields, where we need to know what's going on and how to operate them. But for today, we're focusing on AMRs, and that's the value proposition that we have. Basically, equipping these teams with predictive analysis tools to identify potential issues before it happens, and providing a scalable, adaptable way of having that data, exposing it via an API. If you need to use it with a third-party system, a lot of times they're using their own systems as well. So just making the data available, like that's what we're all about, democratizing data. And again, then making that data valuable so that people can use it, whether it's someone who is operating the fleet, whether it's more the end user, the client who wants to have a second source of truth about the robot, how well it's operating, and just basically having a dashboard to have all that information in one centralized way.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian, for sharing that. And I guess, what you describe is also supporting robotics company that want to scale globally, right? With a centralized platform and having robots being managed centrally, but from a distributed perspective.
Yeah, I didn't go into the technical aspects here of the clouds because each client will have their own. To Emil's point, some of them are going to be on-prem, some of them are going to have different clouds.
Exactly.
In full transparency, I'm not even sure if we can deploy for clients in China that have their very specific clouds. Everyone's going to have their own cloud provider, and that's probably one of the big factors as well when we're talking about American companies coming to Europe or European companies going to Asia. Can we all adapt to each other's cloud? So making it available through API at least makes it easier, but not always, a given.
Yeah. It's a very lively conversation. I wish we had more time to cover other topics, but I'm looking at the time, and I guess it's also good to have some closing thoughts and maybe take a step back now. And one question that maybe some of our people in the audience that are building new robotics project and so on would be interesting to get the answer to, Emil, is like, if you would position yourself now as an advisor of a robotics startup that is trying to expand internationally, what is the one thing, the one advice that you will give them, or the blind spot they should be absolutely be aware to be careful with?
Okay, so if the question is international expansion, right? How do I get all over the world? I think really thinking about local presence, okay? Whether you are doing it through a bunch of local system integration partners or you're hiring your own team, you need to be local with the customer. It's good to have a global brand and a global product, but at the end of the day, you cannot projects remotely. You have to have support on site. And that starts all the way through the sales process, implementation, and after sales support. Okay. This is probably the biggest challenge for going international is you have to actually go there.
Very interesting, yeah. Maybe one last question for you, Emil. I mean, we've seen now the technology market like being completely disrupted with generative AI, with MCP protocol, chatbots that are being integrated now in robotics application. Do you see any trend or signal that is currently a bit under the radar but could change everything in this space?
Wow, excellent question. I'm looking forward to NVIDIA Jetson PCs and computer vision strongly changing the way mobile robots work. So I'm a mobile robot guy, and there's lots of other cool stuff happening out there. But the way I see it, the robots that are being used in production, in commercial settings, are still using sort of 5-year-old or 10-year-old ideas. And there's so much power you can do when you have the sensing and the intelligence, and I'm really looking forward to startups disrupting what we think about today as AMRs. AMRs disrupted AGVs, and what's the next wave? What's the next kind of generation of technology that is using computer vision and AI to navigate smarter and be much forward to that, and I think it's coming very soon. All the pieces are there.
That sounds like a very promising last thought, and I'd like to thank you, Emil and Adrian, for your contribution today. Maybe it's time to open the floor to the audience if they have any question. So I'm going to then terminate that recording, and then we see you live in a few seconds. Thank you very much.
Bye, folks.
And here we are. Look at that. It looks like it was a good idea, as you can see, that we pre-recorded because we had some connectivity issue, but hopefully a very interesting event for you to follow. We already at like 4:30, so we're going to take just a few minutes to answer any question that you might have. I've seen some question coming up on in the audience, so I'm going to be putting them live or just reading them. One question was, how are impacting the regulatory differences between different regions on the AMR performance? Maybe Emil, you could give us some thought about that. You're mute, I think.
How about now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey guys, hope you guys had a good time enjoying the recording, and we'll stay on as long as the connectivity here in China allows. So the question was, how is the regulation across different regions impacting performance? Which is a really insightful question, right? So the main differences in regulations has to do with safety, and you might say how strict the safety requirements are. So there is definitely a trade-off between safety and performance. At the extreme, you could say the safest robot is the one that's turned off. We do have really safe robots today, so you don't need to turn them off. But there is sort of a trade-off where you say, okay, do I need a really big safety field? Then I cannot navigate a really narrow aisle and so on. Speed is certainly related to both performance and safety, but in opposite directions, right? So it's a really good thing to understand the trade-off. I think the onus is on the vendor to get the maximum performance from a safe system, but there is this trade-off, and if you try to really maximize safety and maximize performance, what happens is cost goes up and can start exploding if you really try to do both. And I think there's also a sort of a difference in the cost between the regions.
I see.
That is driven by the regulation, right? So
Yeah.
the regulation is driving cost differences, not just performance differences.
Yeah, and I remember at the beginning of the webinar you mentioned about how European region is focusing on safety. I think it's also data privacy, right? Well, the platform that we have also allows you to manage some of this data privacy with the recording. And I think it's important, especially for robotics provider that are operating into their customer environment and wants to ensure the privacy of the data that they are dealing with. Maybe one last question that was from the audience, and I guess this one is for Adrian. What are the requirements to integrate Heex platform? Maybe you can answer that, and you can also maybe give us the news about the self-serve release that is coming up.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, great. We just actually released our self-serve offering, so people can actually try it out 14-day for free. There are two options, basically. Depending on whether or not you have a robot, it should be able to integrate. One is you're gonna require more heavy lifting, basically leveraging our SDK, so that you can deploy agents on your robot, so they can start basically monitoring the signals and then collecting that data to get smart data out of it. And we're gonna cover like Linux and CentOS, like the big OSs, but for sure as we have mentioned before, we're now part of the OSRA, so we're really focusing on ROS developers. So we have an exciting feature that we released just last quarter called RDA, which allows you to, in a basically no-code way, connect your robot to Heex. So all you have to do is upload a ROS bag. It's actually going to then crawl through the content there and basically be able to subscribe to all the different messages you have in there and start generating smart data out of it. So the barrier of entry is basically as low as possible as we can make it for ROS developers. We're hoping that we can start having more standard robots be as easily integratable. But for the rest, as I said, there is a bit of work to be done, basically just downloading the SDK. We have a new quick start, actually, which was just released, our self-serve offering. So yeah, there's never been a better time to try out Heex, and at least you got that 14 free day trial. And let us know in case you have any questions about integrating it specifically. Happy to connect you with our customer success management team.
Sounds good. Well, we are just about time, so thank you very much again, both of you. Emil, thank you for joining, especially from China. We do really appreciate your contribution to that very lively conversation. Adrien, thank you also as well for sharing the insights from Heex Technologies perspective. I hope you guys enjoy the talk, and any other question, you know where to reach us. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pierre.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Emil.